Today on Investigate TV, electric vehicles rising in popularity, but so-called charging deserts plague drivers.
And so all of a sudden the battery was like, just kidding, we can't make it anymore.
Plus, trucks stopped along highways, something intended to increase safety, creates another hazard.
I see it every day. They're parked all over.
And car rental smuggling on the rise. How one man's quest for extra cash resulted in him being part of a criminal investigation.
As soon as I handed it over to him, I knew that I probably had made a big mistake.
Investigate TV starts right now. Hello and welcome to Investigate TV. I'm Lee Zurich. More and more electric vehicles are hitting the road, but the critical charging stations they need to keep moving aren't available everywhere. The Biden administration is working to fix the problem, pushing for 500,000 charging stations nationwide by 2030. But until they're all built, Joce Sterman discovered drivers in many parts of the country may find themselves in a charging desert.
So see, here's where I was going. This is my parents.
Justin McCormick's trips to see family are a little bit longer since he moved from Arkansas to Austin, Texas. The electric vehicle he fell in love with was supposed to make getting back a little easier.
It plans it out for you.
But the plan for a trip home last year went south once he got north of Dallas and headed into Oklahoma. McCormick's car, which can usually find charging stations at the push of a button, couldn't track down any as his charge dwindled.
And so all of a sudden the battery was like, just kidding, we can't make it anymore.
He hit what's called a charging desert, an area with no public places for electric vehicles to plug in and recharge. Outside the East and West Coasts, they're fairly common. Our national investigative team analyzed charging station data from the Department of Energy, creating this heat map that shows chargers concentrated mostly in urban areas, with shortages plaguing much of Middle America.
I think worst case, and that was if I traveled, I was going to get stranded.
It's a fear many EV drivers share, with range anxiety leaving them wondering if they'll have the miles to make it where they're going, especially on long trips. You'll see it all over social media, with people from West Virginia to Minnesota, the Great Plains to Portland, calling out a lack of publicly accessible chargers. McCormick is among them.
That really creates like a lot of barriers that I think that people don't realize.
They're hurdles that are becoming increasingly problematic as more EV drivers join the 3 million already on the hunt for places to plug in. That national data analyzed by our team shows there are more than 53,000 public EV charging stations across the U.S. in places like convenience stores, parking garages, universities, even a zoo and a winery. But while California, New York, and Florida make the top 3 for most chargers, with thousands each, we also discovered there are 5 states with fewer than 100 stations total. Less than 15% of all public charging stations nationwide are DC fast, the quickest type that can charge 200 miles in a matter of minutes, while the vast majority of stations are level 2, where charging could take hours. And we found many places may have restrictions that limit hours of operation, put caps on charging time, or require you to bring your own cord.
There is much more that needs to be done to strengthen the network.
It's work that's getting a boost from the federal infrastructure law that's channeling $5 billion over 5 years to a special program that'll help build out the country's EV charging network and eliminate some deserts. But with much of the focus on EVs so far centered on big cities and suburbs, Virginia Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is fighting to make sure charger funding also makes its way to rural areas.
What do you think happens if rural communities are left behind when this money goes out?
It would be catastrophic.
Spanberger, who has introduced legislation designed to fund EV charging infrastructure specifically for farmers, says rural areas will feel the pain well into the future if they're not prioritized for charging stations. She says those banks of chargers can be a lifeline for small towns and counties that need revenue, making them destinations that draw drivers in.
Those can be major drivers of tourism to rural and agricultural communities. We want to make sure that as someone's driving through, that they're not just having to hug the interstate because they think that that's where they're going to be able to find the charging station.
I think we have a real opportunity right now to make sure that rural communities aren't left behind. That's not a foregone conclusion.
But Emily Wurzbo with the Environmental Defense Fund says stakeholders have to get involved in the process now because every state in the country is getting a piece of the charging program's pot and has to submit plans outlining how they'll spend it year by year.
It's really a pivotal moment right now because there's a chance to course correct. We can give in feedback to let the government know how this funding is working.
Right now, the work is focused on building out so-called alternative fuel corridors along some of the nation's busiest highways, putting fast EV charging stations every 50 miles, no more than a mile off the interstate. After that, Wurzba says states have more wiggle room to decide where stations could go off the beaten path.
It's up to their state Department of Transportation to have conversations across the state to figure out where they need charging the most. So it's designed to try to meet the needs of a specific state. So the conversation is really geared towards making it work for the local community.
Justin McCormick knows what can happen when a community isn't fully charged with the stations a growing number of EV drivers need.
And it just kept saying negative however many miles, negative, negative, negative.
Despite his experience in a charging desert, he's still positive about electric vehicles and hopes the network gets a boost before his next trip home. Rural, underserved areas are also getting another opportunity to fund EV charging stations in their area. A $2.5 billion grant program specifically designed to serve those communities was unveiled this spring.
Thanks, Joce. While smaller communities await funding earmarked for charging stations, some business owners who rely on tourist travel have taken the matter into their own hands. Cameron Chin in Marquette, Michigan shows us how they've kept up with the surge in EVs.
As of December 2022, there are more than 33,000 electric vehicles in Michigan, a 90% increase from 2021. According to the Department of Energy, Michigan as a whole is host to 1,200 charging stations. 29 of those are located in the UP, creating pockets of so-called charging deserts. A charging desert is an area with little to no public access to a public electric vehicle charging station. And communities in the far corners of the UP are beginning to take note of the need.
While we don't have specific numbers on the number of EV vehicles that are coming to the Keweenaw, we know that just based on queries from people planning their trips, and then once they get here feedback from the business community, that a larger segment of the traveling public needs charging infrastructure to support the travel.
In these rural communities, helping visitors get there can be vital to tourist-dependent businesses like the Mariner North Resort in Copper Harbor. The resort just installed 2 charging stations of its own. The owners say they recognize the lack of stations in their area and hope to support traffic to their resorts, which is open all year.
Charger behind this is a speed charger. You can get a reasonably charged within an hour, and it requires a lot of electricity and transformers. The other chargers at a longer lasting time, you can spend a night in a cabin or motel and your car will be charged.
On the other side of the peninsula, businesses like the Top of the Lake Snowmobile Museum in Nobbinway have already seen a number of travelers with electric vehicles. The museum contacted its electric company to discuss options after one driver offered to pay to use an outside outlet to charge their car. The museum board chairman says allowing EV drivers to charge there could have benefits for the area and the museum.
It would make Nobbinway a destination. If there was a charging station somewhere in town, maybe the people would want to spend an hour here at the museum while their car is charging.
Valier says the challenge right now is guaranteeing that those who would charge at the museum also come in and pay the admission fee. He says there are options like having public charging stations installed, but there are some key limitations to those opportunities.
We're still not ready for it. There's grants available, but they want to put 4 charging stations in. That's taken up 4 parking places. And then there wasn't a whole lot of money in it for us. Our board hasn't made a final decision yet, but we're a snowmobile museum, not electric charging station.
A research engineer from the Michigan Tech University's APS Labs says planning is key for those with EVs.
So for people making long distance trips, the vehicle's only good for about 250 miles. So by using the tools that are available to figure out where the charging stations are, they should be able to plan their route accordingly.
Schubert says EV drivers should always charge their cars overnight and to always plan ahead on where they should stop to charge on a road trip.
To keep up with our latest investigations, follow us on social media. We're at InvestigateTV on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Coming up, trucks stop along highways every day, some in places they're not supposed to, and it's creating a danger for other drivers. That story after the break. Welcome back to Investigate TV. You've likely seen trucks parked along highway on and off ramps. The reason why? Federal law limits how many hours truckers can be on the road before they need to rest. Electronic logging devices track their movements and send any violation directly to the feds. But when a truck stops where it shouldn't, that safety stop becomes another hazard. Susan L. Corey in St. Louis takes a look at the dangers these trucks can pose when they're on the side of the road.
Trucks, one after another, line Metro East highways. Inside, drivers are sleeping, making what's supposed to be a safety stop another hazard.
I see it every day. They're parked all over.
Anthony White has spent 20 years driving trucks across the country.
I don't park on the ramps.
Others make a different choice. News 4 Investigates wanted to see how much it's happening.
No parking sign.
So we hit the road, driving down I-70 in Illinois just as the sun was rising. It only took a few minutes to spot trucks parked along on and off ramps.
Four here.
In about an hour on the road, we saw more than 20 trucks breaking the rules. Even when signs say what you can't do, some aren't listening. Drivers we talked to say enforcement varies.
I got tickets for that. I try not to.
They say that, but the cops don't do anything. I mean, go to any one of the truck stops. You'll see them parked all over the ramps.
Federal law limits how many hours truckers can be on the road before they need to rest, what's called hours of service. As of 2017, trucks are required to have electronic monitoring sent directly to the Department of Transportation, or DOT, meaning if they don't stop, the feds will know.
So I'm in violation. If DOT wants, they can write me a ticket.
In July, at the westbound Silver Lake rest stop off I-70 in Madison County, a Greyhound bus crashed into 3 semis stopped along the shoulder, injuring 14 people. 3 passengers died. We went back after the crash and saw a truck parked in the same area.
If you don't stop by 5, 6 o'clock, there's nowhere to park.
Here at the Silver Lake rest stop where the crash happened, there are signs showing no parking on the shoulder, but you can see where trucks are still doing that. That's why one Illinois congressman believes he has the solution.
Allows states to use federal dollars to then expand parking spots in their existing rest areas or expand and create new rest areas.
Republican Congressman Mike Bost is behind a bipartisan bill asking for $755 million over 3 years to create parking at rest stops.
It expands and gives money that is not taken away from highways, bridges, and things like that.
He proposed this bill before during past sessions. It didn't pass. Bost believes the Greyhound crash shows lawmakers need to change something. He's also eyeing electronic logs in trucks, which he says is part of the problem.
The electronic logbooks don't allow for any common sense stuff, unfortunately. You're going to say you're going to drive from this point to this point, and you got to have this stop, and you got to have this stop, even if you're not in a place where you can stop.
On the road, drivers like White know their options are limited, leaving some crossing a dangerous line.
I wish they had more parking. I mean, we got plenty of land in this country. I don't know why they don't make more parking.
It's estimated truckers spend approximately 1 hour per day looking for safe parking. And according to a study commissioned by the Federal Highway Administration, 98% of truck drivers say they regularly experience difficulty finding safe parking and are forced to park on the side of an interstate, an exit ramp, or another unsafe area. If you're looking for more investigative reporting on demand, download our streaming apps on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Up next, a warning. We look at a case of peer-to-peer car rental smuggling and the nightmare it created for the vehicle's owner. Welcome back to Investigate TV. Peer-to-peer car sharing, where a person rents their car to another driver, has experienced rapid growth in recent years, with many using it as a way to make some extra cash. But federal law enforcement says that, while still rare, they've seen an increase in criminal organizations targeting these rental cars for illegal acts. Rebecca Taylor in Tucson, Arizona, spoke with a man whose vehicle was impounded after it was allegedly used in a human trafficking incident.
The person who makes their car available is called the host, and the person who rents the car is called a guest.
Charles Jackson shows us the Turo website, described as the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. He recently bought a 2014 Ford C-Max hybrid and decided to rent it out on days he's not using it, charging guests $72.
One of the things that should have tipped me off that someone would rather rent my vehicle than rent a Lexus or a Mercedes. A Mercedes is like a $55 or $60 rental. My car's a Ford.
Jackson says his first rental using the platform turned into a nightmare. Instead of going to Casa Grande to help a friend move, as agreed to in the messaging app, he says the guest headed out of state.
It was a 24-hour rental, so it was due to be back by 10 o'clock on Tuesday.
And when the car wasn't returned, what happened next?
Oh, panic set in.
Jackson says the guest drove to El Paso, Texas, and was coming back through Wilcox when Border Patrol stopped the car.
And it was for human trafficking. The person that had been arrested was the person who rented my vehicle.
And they damage these vehicles because some of the times they'll drive off-road or they'll drive in dirt roads that they don't know, sometimes in the middle of the night.
Border Patrol agent Jesus Vasabilbaso says while most criminal incidents involving peer-to-peer car rentals are out of Phoenix, it's happening in southern Arizona too.
I don't have any data, but I can tell you that in the last couple of years, we've seen an increase.
One reason? When law enforcement runs the license plate, unlike a car rental from a national chain, it appears as a personal vehicle.
Now with the peer-to-peer rentals, it's much harder to know if that's a rental vehicle.
Jackson shared with 13 News the guest's driver's license, saying he passed Turo's background checks. Public records showed that driver has 2 state drug convictions, one for driving under the influence of a dangerous drug in Phoenix in 2015, and another for possession of drug paraphernalia in Marana last October. We asked Turo what kind of background checks are done on drivers before they can rent vehicles. We were emailed this statement. We conduct robust safety screenings to flag and investigate any suspicious activities, and we're implementing additional solutions with law enforcement agencies and affiliated organizations to ensure our community remains safe and protected. Additionally, a Turo spokesperson tells 13 News the guest who rented the vehicle online possibly isn't the same person who Jackson handed his keys to, claiming Jackson failed to do a physical ID check. Even so, Turo says they have suspended the guest's account and are covering Jackson's costs, including his car insurance and car payment, until the vehicle is returned to him. Jackson doesn't believe his car is damaged.
To get the vehicle back, it can take up to 3 months.
For anyone thinking of renting out their vehicle, Vasavilbaso recommends investing in GPS. Jackson's advice is to listen to your gut instinct.
As soon as I handed it over to him, I knew that I probably had made a big mistake.
If you plan to rent out your car as a side hustle, experts recommend doing an ID check on the renter and to prioritize safety by following platform guidelines for guest check-ins. Suspicious activity should be reported to the car sharing company and law enforcement. Want to hear more stories like this? Check out the Investigate TV YouTube page for our latest content and partnerships. Coming up, this week's Watching Your Wallet. An emerging scam costs people millions of dollars every year. Hear what you need to know about the fake landlord scam after the break. Welcome back to Investigate TV. More than 40% of people say they or someone they know have lost money because of rental fraud. That's according to a recent survey. The FBI warns these scams are on the rise, saying fraudsters cash in on renters who need to act quickly on what looks like a good deal. Rachel DePompa shares how to spot the common fake landlord scam.
According to the CEO and co-founder of Dwellzy, this is when someone steals a legitimate apartment listing and reposts it, posing as the landlord. Usually, the only thing that's changed is the contact information and the rent price, which is now way less expensive. When you reach out to learn more about the apartment, the scammer then tries to get your information, including your social security number and driver's license. They'll ask for a deposit before you ever see the property, and then the scammer disappears with your money and personal information. It is frustrating and getting to be more and more common. So what can you do? Dwellzy offers this advice. First, use a safe site to search for listings. Sites that charge landlords a fee to post properties can be more reputable. Look for duplicate listings. When you search and you keep seeing the same property over and over with different prices, be skeptical. Tour the property and meet the landlord before you sign a contract or give up a deposit. If you feel pressured to pay, walk away. Be wary if the price is significantly lower than most of the listings that you've come across. If it's too good to be true, it likely is. Also, avoid paying with PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, any of those peer-to-peer payment options, because if there is fraud, it's much harder to get your money back. So don't actually use something like Venmo until you've moved in.
Thanks, Rachel. Last year, victims nationwide lost a combined $397 million in real estate scams. According to the latest data from the FBI, if you believe you've been targeted by a scam, stop all contact immediately and file a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov and report any transfer of funds to your financial institution. Want to take a deeper dive into some of our investigations? Read more of our team's work at InvestigateTV.com. And that's it for us. Thanks for watching.